Hello, I'm Orlin. Welcome to Speaking of Everything. I have a very special guest. Always here, hold the record for the most person all my shows. The lady, she's this one. Happy service. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, and thank you for that introduction. I can't help to remark immediately that I mentioned that to someone the other day. And I was like, I don't know if I still hold it, but I know at some point in time I did. So thank you for reconfirming that.
All right, it's good to have you in the program.
Thank
so how are
you.
things going with you so far?
Good. And just coming out of St. Martin's Day, that hype and that positivism, I think I still have some of it in my system, and because it's always hopeful to hear and see how our people celebrate St. Martin Day. So, but overall things are good. If it was too quiet and too uneventful, then I probably would be worried, but it remains eventful.
All right, so you're the longest serving member for Parliament.
Yes, at this time, definitely, yeah. I am
the original one there, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, definitely from 2014. So, following my term as Prime Minister, yes. Since then, I have been in Parliament, and of course, in different positions. Sometimes I have supported the government as part of the coalition, like I do right now. I've also been in opposition. I've been President of Parliament. I've been out of the presidency. So
But you're
quite
the first
a
Prime
moving
Minister,
around.
right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
So you hold a lot of records.
Sorry?
You hold a lot of records.
Yeah, and for the country, St. Martin, and I think at this stage, and I don't want to run ahead, I'm sure it will come up in the discussion. At this stage, I become concerned, but remain positive about our future. And I guess it has to do realizing that from within Parliament, and I say this also understanding how my fellow MPs think and feel, because unlike what many people believe, it is very difficult to effectuate change from out of Parliament unless you have a cooperative government and shared priorities. So and that's why I can understand sometimes the expressions of frustration by members of Parliament.
Well, you're leader of the Democratic Party. You led a delegation to the Netherlands for separate status back in 2006, somewhere there.
Well, Oral, in 2006 was what I consider a watershed moment in the whole constitutional process. And I have truly lost count of the times during the period 2000 and 2010, but as part of the delegation of St. Martin for the last year. But for the initial 9 years, even before the referendum, I have lost count. I have lost count of the times that I had to be abroad representing St. Martin for constitutional change. Truly. And, because it was between 2000 and 2005, it was knocking on closed doors, and literally, I recall during those initial years, and I'll tell you why 2005 in a moment, but in those initial years, I remember literally being shut out of meetings in the Netherlands by the then politicians of the Netherlands. Why, you would ask, and how would I allow something like that to happen? Because before Curaçao had their referendum in 2005, and by the way, Statia as well, the Dutch government, even after our referendum in 2000, the Dutch government maintained that their speaking partner was the Netherlands Antilles. So even when I travel along with the delegation of the Netherlands Antilles, St. Martin did not have a voice. And I actually was told on more than one occasion, you will wait outside until we have spoken to the Antillean delegation. But I kept on trucking. And as you mentioned, 2006 was one of the final conclusions in terms of our new status. It was a year after Curaçao had their referendum. But those years between 2000 and 2005 were really, it was an uphill battle. And but in 2009, and that's why I say up to 2009, after that I was still part of the delegation, but remember that in 2009, we had a change in the government of the island territory. Lots of people look at what is happening today in the parliament, and we have had government changes, we have had so-called ship jumpers, as we like to call them, but we had some changes in coalitions during island territory days, and we had such a change in 2009. But before that, it really was, as I said before, an uphill battle. And with the support of the people, because that's what the people expressed in 2000 that they wanted, we kept on fighting it. Of course, it wasn't only me, but who I always take off my hat to, and I believe that it was because they were passionate about the topic as well, is the small group of advisors from St. Martin who were always there assisting me and assisting the entire delegation of St. Martin.
I remember the night you called in on our live show to tell the people of St. Martin that you had an agreement with the Dutch government.
Yeah.
And I can still remember the excitement in your voice.
Yeah. And in fact, not too long ago, I think it was around the period of 2025, when we celebrated Constitution Day, that I posted a picture of our arrival at the airport. And at that time, my late husband and others were there to receive us. And you had the late Vance James, and you also had former MP William Marlin. And that picture and that excitement that were in our faces as we saw the people at the airport who were there to welcome us, tell it all. And every so often I look at that picture to remind me, you were on a mission at the time, and that is still what, we are trying to make it work as a country, as a system that we have always cognizant. And I remind people that because I often hear, but we can't do, what we would like to do constitutionally speaking. And I said, if there's one thing that I never ever let go of and would not allow to be undone, is the fact that St. Martin, even now, even after our referendum in 2000, we have and we maintain, and I hold sacred, the right of the people of St. Martin to self-determination anytime. And although, unlike Aruba right now in the charter, they have the possibility, which they negotiated when they stepped back from their independent drive. What they did negotiate is that they, in the charter now, they can basically leave this current constellation of the Dutch kingdom. And while with us, and I have been advocating that we too get that right documented in the charter, but I really don't have an issue if we don't get it, because the right to self-determination is ours regardless to what. It's up to the people of St. Martin, and I hold that sacred. And I always tell people, don't feel that if tomorrow the people of St. Martin had to say to their politicians, to their representatives, we want out of the kingdom, that anyone can stop us. Because that right to self-determination is as they call it, an inalienable right of the people. And that to me is, I wanted to say nearly sacred.
I'm surprised that what you just said.
I can imagine, because and I try to tell people that don't look at the outside as us not getting and going where we want to go. That is our right. Okay, so let's understand that for one. I will not expend any energy in the decolonization talk, because we could be on that topic for decades. What I do insist that we have the right to, as a small island developing state, is the right to development as enshrined in United Nations Declaration. And that right to development should be granted to us based on our pace of development. That's why I also, so you would see a lot of dogmas I disagree with, because I also disagree with the saying, yeah, but we are equal within the Dutch kingdom. When we say that and we kind of demand to treat us equal, I think we're cutting ourselves short. We're not equal. And we shouldn't pretend to be equal with, for example, the Netherlands, and to a lesser degree, even the other bigger islands and the constituent countries within the Dutch kingdom. Even here, we are not equal. Equity and respect, those are different issues. And I think that's what we have to demand. But also let it be known, we are entitled to our right to development.
So, MP, how have you arrived at that conclusion? Because, I'm one of the people who always say we're not equal partners in the kingdom. A lot of politicians feel they're equal because they're part of this whole four country part of the kingdom. Yeah. I'm happy to hear you saying now we're not equal. Yeah,
and Oral, we get caught up in these discussions when, to me, we don't have the opportunity to speak rational about these topics. So your question was, but when did I arrive at that conclusion? I've always held it. I've always held it, because there's no way, and I keep saying, if we so-called demanding equality in the constellation that we're in, we are cutting ourselves short, and no wonder that can be held against us. So you're equal, but you didn't do this. Look how poorly you did this. Look, you know what I'm saying? No, we just got on this bandwagon of this constituent, you want to say constituent country, which to me is still a little confusing, because it's basically like a state. When we negotiated, in fact, when we drafted, and Oral, you will remember, when we talked about wanting a new status, we were like, we want to be FISA. You would recall that name. Full internal self-government in sovereign association. Was that our invention? No, it was not. We used a United Nations principle of saying, well, okay, here's where we at, and we would like to associate ourselves. In this case, it is the Netherlands, or it could have been in association with any other, whether it be an organization or another country, another constellation. And but we never really we get into that discussion. She's oftentimes referring to me. She doesn't believe in decolonization, but we're still a colony. And I don't know if we look at it in that way, that we're demanding the right things for our people. That's my thing around.
Well, wow.
I know, right?
And I don't want to call the name of a person who was a part of your delegation during the negotiation process to where we are today.
Okay.
But I was at a club meeting we had, and this person was very adamant. I mean, we had quite an argument there because he claimed that, no, we are not a colony. And I said, look, I'm not an attorney, but no, we are a colony. And so now I'm hearing you as the delegation leader, the person who fought for separate status along with the other parties. in the coalition in Zimbabwe at the time now saying openly that we are a colony.
Well, and that's the thing, Oral, and I think too often we let ourselves be led by like the semantics of it. I am saying the discussion that we have had, and Oral, we have spent a lot of time, even in Parliament, talking about decolonization. And I'm saying that's the wrong argument towards the Dutch kingdom to say, but you didn't decolonize us back in 1954 or whenever. And I'm saying, be that as it may, don't let us use that argument, which is also part of UN declarations and the Decolonization Committee, and whether we want to go back on a list of non-self-governing territories. To me, Oral, let's step out of that mold and talk and demand the right to development, the one enshrined in UN declarations in 1986, because we can't change the 1954, and we are part of this charter. But we should be able, with a clear focus, to demand what we need for our further development. And that's why I have been critical of things like the country package. Everyone knows that.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about it.
And just recently, finally, we had a meeting last week, I believe it was, because I have been demanding that the government, demanding might be a heavy leading word, but, come and tell us what's going on there, because this kind of thing about this package, and I keep reminding everyone, and they're like, why are you going back there? But we have to understand where we came from to evaluate where we're at. And that's the same thing for the country package. The country package and Oral, I know our government and our people need the money and the funding to do things that need to be done, okay? So when the country package was used, that was after the COVID situation. And the Dutch government was like, you need to become more resilient, you need to be able to face and to resist these type of shocks. So you need to upgrade your administration, you need to strengthen your administration, etc., etc., etc. So at the last moment, because the government of the time was not really keen about or in favor of the country package, in December of 2020, Oral, at the last moment, the government of St. Martin reluctantly agreed to this country package.
Why?
However, because they realized that they had no other financial way out. And remember, we were coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
And,
and then they had Irma before with that whole...
Of course. And that's another part of our history that we should not forget. So coming back to the country package, but by that time, December 2020, the framework for the country packages was already developed for Curacao and Aruba. They had come on board before we did. So we kind of accepted what was in that country package.
You all had any input into it?
Not really. And that's why when you see things like, let's take tax reform, okay? We for years, as far as I could recall and remember, governments and parliaments, tax reform, we know we need tax reform. That's an issue. That's another issue. That's an item in the country package. However, in the country package, it was already stated, well, we're going to go over to a kind of a value-added tax. They even had a percentage in the country package. So we now are trying to give the country package execution a St. Martin cover. And that's why you're not seeing this program got off the ground, how this program got off the ground with any speed, because then we had to basically, we had to catch up. Well,
there's a deadline to the implementation, I guess, when it comes to all of these country packages, because...
And that's another issue.
Is it 2027 somewhere there?
2027.
Yeah.
So what happened, and I would be the last one to say, but no work is being done. But when you have to work on all of these fronts in order to get financing for what you're doing or co-financing, then you're not seeing the progress on the individual projects and programs, and that's what we have now. And now, given 2027, the government is saying, or the Dutch government is saying to us, you have to establish priorities.
So this country packages consist of how many packages? Because you have taxation, yeah, whole automation of the government infrastructure, and a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different things that are happening.
Sorry.
I think so. You go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that when we look at St. Martin and the country packages, you've spoken about it more than any other politician, I think, right? And the thing about it is still the majority of the people of St. Martin are not really aware of what these packages are and how important it is to St. Martin.
And you're seeing where something, and that's why the prison reconstruction is gaining so much attention, because that's one of them, along with financial management, that is moving ahead in terms of, and then you're seeing where the money is coming in, but it always requires also input of St. Martin. The prison reconstruction also is part of St. Martin's budget, but matters like, for me, that matter. The issue of gambling, the issue of the corporate governance, all of these are also part of the country package.
Yeah, but the part with gambling seems to be such a big issue because there seems to be no political will actually to implement it.
And that's unfortunate because again, so we have been talking about it like forever. When I say we, I mean successive governments, successive ministers, successive coalitions have been talking about it, and then it took it for it to be taken up in the country package to get some movement into it. And that brings me exactly to my point, Oral, that we started to discuss in terms of we got to know what we want.
Yeah.
We have to know what our priorities are. Nobody can enforce these matters unless we want to go along. Why is it that corporate governance needs to be something in the country package? When we have been talking about corporate governance, when we were the ones who many years ago did a corporate governance review at a time with Notary Mike Alexander, a whole process that we went through. So I like, now we're hearing, as I said before, but we got to now establish priorities. Where are the issues of our tax reform, and don't let me get like started off on such a positive note, and then I have a lot of concerns. I honestly have a lot of concerns with the speed that we're moving ahead with, and while there's so many things happening that we need to be on top of these things as a country. Aurel and I pinpointed no one particular person. I include myself, and then I also mentioned that's part of the frustration that others and myself as members of parliament feel in terms of seeing progress. Let me put it that way.
Well, I gotta go to a quick break in case it just joined. I'm speaking with the leader of the Democratic Party. She's also president of parliament. She's my guest. She'll be right back. Please tell us.
We are vibrant, expressive, warm, and diverse. Together, we conquer, and now we expand into new horizons, giving you more of the best. Introducing our new Bankomatico Plus with wider acceptance, purchase protection, and enhanced security. Whether you're online, traveling, or in paradise, experience more with Windward Island Bank. Bankomatico Plus, more of the best.
My guest on Speaking of Other Things is the leader of the Democratic Party. She's also president of Parliament, longest serving member of the Parliament of St. Martin, and we're here with her on Speaking of Other Things. MP Wescot. It's amazing because you kind of surprise me. I
know, right?
I've been interviewed so many times, but there's so many things happening, and a lot of people feel like, okay, we're now 15 years in this new constitutional arrangement with the Dutch government and Aruba and Curacao. And it seems like there's a lot of people who are not happy. And at the same time, there's a lot of poverty.
Yeah, that's my point. Oh, well, that's exactly my point. So I am not going to expend much time now, in these days, in these years, in these whatever, on a theoretical discussion about our political status. A theoretical discussion on it because of the issues. We can't blame anyone else for the fact that there is poverty on St. Martin. And while for years we have spoken about the need to come to a poverty line in order to determine what we're going to do about it, we really ain't get nowhere. So we can't look outward to solve that kind of a problem. Or well, I would be the last person to say, well, no man, anything we want to do in the Dutch kingdom, we can do. I would be the last one to say that attempts have not been made to trample our own internal government. I would be the last one to say that there are not articles in the current charter that allow the Netherlands to use and misuse. I would be the last one to say that something does not need to be done with this Article 43, because that's one. Let me go back, Oral, to the ideal form and format of the charter. Okay, and again, Oral, I look at global United Nations type of structure. So as old as the charter is, it can be argued that, but this is a type of free association in which the countries are responsible for all of their internal affairs except the kingdom matters: defense, foreign affairs, and nationality. According to the charter, that's the only time that the kingdom government, and I put a question, not a question mark, I put between quotations in terms of that being a government. That's a different issue.
So that has never changed.
And that has never changed, because this ain't really a government. The kingdom government doesn't have its own budget, Oral. It don't have its own budget. It really ain't a government. It's not a government, and it doesn't have a kingdom parliament. So then we get into the democratic deficit. Is there a democratic deficit? Yes, of course. Have Dutch governments over the years tried to impose their will upon us and also hold the carrot of funding in front of us? Yes, they have. Yes, they have. But I also believe that as long as we are in this current situation, these kind of things we should not allow. We should not allow it to happen again. The ideal situation is we are responsible for all our internal matters except those three that I mentioned. Then there's also in the charter a but. And that but is, countries can work together. They can agree to have cooperation agreements. That's in the charter. However, over the years, starting with the country status, this concept of a consensus kingdom law came up. That's how our police, our public prosecution, our court, our finances, that's where the CFT issue came in. So-called under a consensus kingdom law. There is nowhere in the charter that regulates a consensus kingdom law. Nowhere. So it's actually pressure by the Dutch parliamentarians over the years that has basically forced this issue of consensus kingdom law without there being a consensus.
So then St. Martin agreed that if St. Martin had, say, 3 consecutive balanced budgets, the CFT will no longer have any say?
Well, and Oral, I have my reservations even with that, because Oral, if you in these years, and I have told this as recently as 3 weeks ago to a representative of the CFT, as long as we continue to fool ourselves with the current CFT consensus kingdom law that goes back to 10-10-10, the biggest countries in the world today, biggest countries, including the Netherlands, are struggling with this so-called balanced budget. But St. Martin is expected. Yeah, Oral. I
I know
could.
you're being realistic. So it makes a lot of sense.
It is honestly true.
Yeah, I know.
And I told them this. They're like, but you would be right to say, but MP, okay. And again, I want to say, that when you look at things, and then there's some days that I say, we cannot continue like this, people. And it has nothing to do with our political status per se. It is because we are saying, and you have motions in Parliament that says, guys, we got to review the CFT thing, because overall we could easily balance the budget, huh? We could easily balance the budget and leave, for example, the cost of health care. Leave it out. Now, so you got a nicely balanced budget, but we're going to deal with that. We push that can down the road, and we could balance the budget. We could balance the budget, but does it include everything that the people of St. Martin need? And I know I could get a criticism with which I would agree. But you could put in what you want government in the budget and not the things that people, the population, believe should be in the budget. That's an argument. You could also have the argument, or you could cut down costs. It's true, but in the bigger picture of things, or where that going to exactly lead us to? Imagine. And roughly, and I think I'll pinpoint it, but roughly, our budget has not increased since 10. Give or take a few millions here and there. 470, 490, I'm talking 100 millions, 500 million, 510, 520. And then right now, today, Oral, I tell you that our 2026 budget is not on the table of Parliament yet, and we have all kind of deadlines based on the CFT law, but it's not on our table yet for sure. We don't even have the amended 2025 budget. Why? Because it's a struggle. It's a struggle to tell the Ministry of Justice, this is all you can get for your budget. And the demands on that ministry are so many. Same goal for education. That's what is taking place right now. So-called to come up with a balanced budget. When we know, if we want to be realistic, it is impossible.
So you can balance the budget, but the people will suffer.
Exactly. And that's what we have seen. And again, Oral, I agree. There are certain things that can be cut from government expenses. But if you put those, whatever they are, telephone, cars, what else we got? Overtime. Name those things. But if you put them in the bigger picture of things, no, there is not where our solutions are. For sure not.
So MP, what?
No, you're smiling to yourself. I know, I can imagine, and I'm trying to, because when we're having this kind of discussion, Oral, my mind for sure, and maybe yours as well, I go into all directions, and when I say A, I also want to say B right here on the program, so that there's no misunderstanding what I'm saying in A. You know what I'm saying? So I try to fill it in, and hardly giving you a chance even to ask a question. But I think it's important, Oral, that we understand. And I know, and I might get flack for this, but one of my goals, Oral, is electoral reform. Because
that's badly needed. Eh?
Because, Oral, all the things that we're talking about here are only complicated because of the lack of, one, stability and vision together. A vision, a common vision for this country. And then somebody could say, but we have a national development plan. Yeah, that is there and still not there. National Development Plan, Oral, initiated, and I know some people like to, you're only saying you, but it was initiated by me as Prime Minister. You understand? But you can't plug in the numbers, you can't plug in the funds that are needed for a vision like the National Development Plan. So it's like there. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about the sustainable development goals that countries hold high in terms of there's where we want to get as a country. These are the 17 goals. St. Martin, we also on that kind of a bandwagon. It's a very colorful scheme that you see, with all the SDGs and Oral. Where are we even going to start with the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Let me ask you a bit. So, what's your relationship, say, now with the Dutch government?
Now, Oral, right now, I am waiting to see where this government, or what kind of a government we're going to get. Yes, D66, they are leading the process of a government formation. However, and I am a little optimistic by what they have said in their program about the relationship, okay? And knowing the D66 and the politicians of the D66, I really think that that party is an Antillean, to use a common nomer, friendly. You know what I'm saying? But remember, they still have to form a government. And when it comes to that, they're no better than we are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? In terms of, how long is it going to last? Look how long the government lasts. So, they used to look at us and tell us about stability, but nobody should tell us about stability when they have their own issues.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Their government fell. Okay, they fall on bigger items, but
Yeah.
and when we talk about electoral reform, we should do this and we should do that. They were like, no, you're infringing on the democratic order and those kind of things. But look what they're facing today.
So tell me a bit. Your
I laugh because I see you smiling and I like it. Yeah.
Since we're also talking about finances, your Minister of Finance came under a lot of pressure recently, even from members within your own party.
Yeah, and I don't think that everyone understands the monetary union that we're in, and the fact that it seems to be the most difficult thing to live up to the charter of the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin.
But it seems to be in imbalance when it comes to
not
the
only
Central
imbalance,
Bank also.
but if we only could have gotten Curaçao and St. Martin, if we only could get our act together on this union, because the last couple of times that persons needed to be appointed, it's the fallback position that the court can be asked to appoint persons. That's how those who are there right now, that's how they are there. Why? Because on paper, the charter was all about parity. All about parity. 3 members from St. Martin, 3 members from Curaçao, and a chairperson. And the chairperson, a gentleman's, gentle ladies agreement was that the chair would be rotated. A term from St. Martin, a term from Curaçao. But overall, the thing is that for our proposed members and for Curaçao proposed members, vice versa, both countries have to agree. So right now, okay? And I don't know if the change in the Minister of Finance on Curaçao, I hope it changes things. But fact is that we could have our members from now until forever. But unless Curaçao agrees to them, so we have to propose via the supervisory board,
right,
and then Curaçao has to do the same thing. But if we don't have joint, not nominations, joint appointments, we ain't got no appointments, huh? And I mean, so if Curaçao has an issue with their board members who are in there now, appointed by the court, they're not going to support members that we nominate. So again, Oral, the bank charter goes out from parity. Well, what could be wrong? You get 3, we get 3, chairperson, we rotate. But if you have whatever, it could be St. Martin too. It could be St. Martin saying, well, I want these persons, and if Curaçao doesn't agree to appoint them, they're not appointed, and the same way the other way around.
And GBE, I can't have you here without asking about GBE. That company is a mess.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what to say about, and I mean this seriously. I went through, just from Parliament records, I went through like questions that we have asked, presentations that we got from government, and Oral, this is how we so often miss the boat. I don't know if, I'm sure you read or heard of this money that is being made available to Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin.
Right.
And it has to be in terms of renewable and alternative energy sources and this kind of thing. Okay. Let me see if I remember the numbers correct. I think 63 Curacao, probably 54 Aruba, and then St. Martin would have ended up with like over 30 million
something like
guilders.
33, something like that. Yeah.
33 to be exact. Okay. So I'm like, okay, and I look at Curacao have their plan, Curacao starting, whatever have you.
They're ahead of us in a way.
Ahead of us. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, guys, so are we ready? Okay? When they say that check is ready to be issued, are we ready? Because don't think they send in 33 million guilders here just by our good looks.
And I can tell you, we're not ready.
And that's the thing. So I'm like, who is preparing this plan for us? Well, GB say they can do it. GB operates on a concession. From 2011, I believe it is. There were targets for alternative energy.
They've never met
in there. Okay, they've never been met. No. We had an energy policy, 2014. So I of course asked about it. We have this here. What about? Well, we need to update it. I'm like, okay, we're waiting. In the meantime, different governments. We had a grid market, which also had to do with alternative energy. What did that report say? Who took charge of it? I don't know. GB itself then commissioned an energy nautics report. Also talks about alternative energy. And while we here going around in circles on this matter, believe you me, if we don't pick that matter up oral, that 33 million going to pass us just like this.
But why I smile. I was on GB board, so I understand the company very well, and I see what's going on. And too often, when management came up with a good solution, or at least walking in the direction of renewable, it was the politician who stepped in and messed it up. Not you, but some other politician that really stepped in and messed it up and stopped it from happening. So I think the public needs to understand. Yes, GB is a public-owned company, and the politicians said we don't wield any power, but they do wield power. So if it doesn't suit a particular political party or individual, it's not going to happen, and that's unfortunate.
All right, let me tell you what I think about it, and I have told this in closed circles to the government and the ministers, and I am going to continue to hammer it. I don't think that a government-owned institution, as they call it, state enterprises, I don't think that's a right fit for our utility company. Let me explain. You have GB, like every other government-owned company, which the structure is like any other company. Shareholder, supervisory board of directors, and management. In the case of GEBE, who carries the hat? So whether it's one minister or the whole COM, that doesn't matter. Fact is, the COM or its representative is shareholder. Okay? As shareholder, you have to look out for the company. You cannot instruct the company to do something that is politically feasible without taking the company as a company into consideration. Okay? On the other hand, when the COM takes off its hat as shareholder, the COM and the ministers in the COM are responsible for the welfare of the people. So I believe combining those two things is nearly impossible because we know the people need relief in terms of the cost of utility. Nobody disagrees with that. But the same shareholder, the government, can't say to the company as a shareholder, well, I think you gotta cut that out, or you gotta cut down this money without taking the financial possibilities of the company into consideration. Because then as shareholder, you are responsible for the welfare of the company. And as COM, you are responsible for the welfare of the people. And I think that's what we see now. So government is saying, I want you to do this. Company is saying, no, you can't do this. Government then comes with a report and have it looked at so-called independently. That report then goes to GB to be like, no, I can't do that. They're suggesting we reduce this cost, that cost. But if we do that, where are we going? Where are we going? I think the structure, and let me phrase my words very carefully, because the next thing, so what are you going to do? Send home the people of GB? No, absolutely not. I'm talking the structure in which you have the shareholder is the government that is responsible for the people. But imagine the frustration that a prime minister would face when he knows his people are hurting and need relief, but he can't instruct the company, because if he instruct the company to do something that the company claims financially is not feasible, then he gets into trouble on the side of the company as shareholder.
But then, would you say that your coalition partner, which is the prime minister in this four-party coalition, is doing the right job when it comes to GB?
Again, to me, it's nearly impossible. And whether it's the prime minister, it's nearly impossible to come out of this situation shining as a government. We're gonna have to change around things drastically and have the kind of control mechanisms in place drastically in order for...
So having BTP as a regulatory agency now for GBE, and the prime minister said sometime in the third quarter of 2026. Look, this has been going on for a long time.
And that's my oral. I and it's probably because I can't say I have nothing else to do, but I take my position as a member of parliament very seriously. And I remember back in the time of former Minister of Economic Affairs, Lambrix, in terms of doing research, I came up against an agreement from 2017 that the BTP was supposed to be our utility regulator. I had an agreement with government. So my question when I came up on that to the former minister was like, and what happened? Well, first of all, some of the ministers tend to doubt when I would tell them, but this exists and that was there, and so in the case of this agreement, the minister said, I'm unaware of that. My ministry is unaware of that. So I insisted, and then he come back and he said, yeah, but now it wasn't worked on, so we need to start again. So do you understand, Oral, why I am so thing about electoral reform? Yeah. And by the time he could have sunk his teeth into it, we had another situation going on. And while when I say, I think 2024, which was a critical year, but at the same time, it was a wasted year because of what happened politically. And yeah, I was very, very reluctant about having a second election in 2024. But at the end of the day, I was like, okay, we grew one seat as a Democratic Party. But I think that's kind of politically selfish, because I honestly think what went on in 2024 was a disaster politically for the country. And all of these things that were like kind of pending and that needed to start. I mean, and that's why I continue. Electoral reform is a issue. We got to we got to bite the bullet on it and stand up against, especially the Dutch government, because they're really the ones who could say, no, you can't make these changes, or what is good for us? What is good for us?
But you also see 2014 as a year where we messed up as an island because of that change in government at the time,
2014.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that followed elections. Yeah. That followed elections. And I always explain, because they're like, yeah, but you had three governments between 2010. This is what is told to me, 2010 and 2014. But what happened, and I still maintain that same position that I had back then, Oral, because, we went in the first government, you would remember, DP, and at the time, the UPP. And we were our 2 seats, but I guess wisdom prevailed at the time, and I was prime minister. But after that, you had a shuffling going on in parliament, not necessarily in government, and things change around. So another coalition came in because you had some ship jumping. Another coalition came in. And then the ones who were in there with me, the UPP at the time, the United People's Party, they were like, yeah, but call election, call election. I said, no, I'm not calling election because we don't have an issue. We don't have an impasse. You have a shift in parliament. So those who were coming in along with the DP, I remain Prime Minister, those who were coming in now, the NA and the others, they were like, okay, no, we don't need election. We have a government, a supported government. So when now then you had an issue going on in Parliament again. And then the NA was like, no, we want election. We want election now. And I said, no, I didn't do it when you were coming in, and I'm doing it now when, again, now is the DP, the up, and then you had some independence.
So in your view, what will electoral reform look like?
Well, first of all, oral, and first of all, oral. This what it is not really electoral reform, but it has to do with the topic we were discussing. So my draft initiative to regulate referendum according to our constitution. That draft is in. Okay, no ifs, no buts. It's in. As I submitted that as an initiative. Electoral reform, I also submitted because, again, our constitution says when it comes, so we have the issue, the only recognized motion in our constitution is what happens if no confidence is expressed in a minister. That's the only one. There's no other kind of motion that is formal. And so, but the constitution also says in Article 33 that how you interpret this thing about a motion or no confidence and who should go home, not go home, make their seat available or not, it says that we should have another law that regulates that. Okay, that's Article 33. So I drafted that initiative as well. And in that initiative about motions, I say, don't let's only look at motion of no confidence. Let's look at motions of disapproval. We have spoken about this in the past, but it's not regulated. We can have a motion, we should be able to have a motion against something that a minister does in particular. Minister does what you do there? No. That don't mean the minister going home, but that mean the minister is going to do corrective action. And so I have an escalation of motions with respect to what ministers can do and what Parliament can say. And then the third one in that series, so to speak, is the fact that this Article 59. Article 59 that grants the government at any time the possibility to decide we call an election. And I don't think that should be just unconditional like that either.
But that's a weapon of a prime minister, basically, if you don't want to use it.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be. Not in this day and age. And again, Oral, we took that over. Coming back to this thing about equality within the kingdom.
Well, right now, MP, there's a lot of talk that we might see a change in government or fall in government. And privately, I understand the prime minister is saying any movement, he's going to invoke that article again. So we go back again to.
And right now in the constitution, this prime minister, any prime minister, can do that. I mean, we have seen elections called like after in 2018, for example. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand that any government would want to do that to the people coming out of the hurricane. But it happened. Yeah. So that to me, that article has a very particular history. Not our history. It has a history in the Dutch kingdom. It came from actually the Dutch Constitution, mind you, the Dutch Constitution. And then the Netherlands Antilles took it over. And then we took it over from the Netherlands Antilles. Never gauging to see whether this was, you smiling has me laughing.
I've never been in favor of that Constitution.
No, you understand?
Yeah.
It's true. But the thing is, and so it came from the Dutch Constitution. And just to give you an idea, and this is what I put in my changes to that particular article in our Constitution, because it came about oral only to be used when there is an impasse. So when no 8 or more members could say, well, okay, we're going to get together, you got an issue going on in government, we're going to get together and form a government. Okay? That is what that article was. To illustrate this, when it was in the Constitution of the Netherlands Antilles, and who had to make that call in the Netherlands Antilles? Who had to make that call to say, oops, we got impasse because it ain't look like we're gonna get parliament supporting a government. You know who had to make that call, Oral? In the Constitution of the Netherlands Antilles, the governor. Why? Because it was not to be political. The governor would say, wow, they're there in parliament negotiating, they can't get together, they can't get to support a government. So if that goes on and on, then the governor could have said, guys, we need election. Because we ain't getting a government to be formed. We ain't getting, if you have a change, somebody could step over, whatever the case may be. When we put the same thing in our constitution, then we say, but wait a minute, let me put it not in the governor as the head of the governor, but let's put it in hands of the government. Because oftentimes the phrase the governor is used as being the head of government, the head of the local government. But in the case of the Netherlands Antilles, it was in the person, the governor, to say, this ain't going nowhere. And then to say, guy, okay, we're going to call election. When we took it over, as I said, it now becomes something by national decree. That means it has been politicized. And of course, you're going to get the prime minister, a prime minister, whichever one. And say, yeah, oh, you think that what you're going to do? And I don't think it's right, because the same country that we took it over from, the Netherlands, now you, the prime minister, decide, which he can. You know, I go call election, but he or she better go to the parliament and give account there. To send them home, because how you sending home? We got you there, but you sending home without any consultation, without any motivation, and that's why I put it in the draft law now.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you something after the show.
Okay.
I had a politician here, another politician, a Calypsonian. Now, Calypsonians are normally very critical of politicians. He says to me, "Who's the smartest politician?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Let me tell you." And he mentioned you. So I said to him, well, I got to agree with you, because I remember Claude saying the same thing to me many times, and I told her about this. So that was Baker Jr.
Wow. No, but you know, and Oral, and I like, you know, guys, let us put these things for ourselves, okay? So, Oral, when we put our constitution together, I was part of it, okay? So I ain't like, oh yeah, they made that constitution. No, I was part of it. And we needed to have a constitution to get a check mark for us to make the different steps that needed to happen for us to become country.
But we can change it now, right?
And that's my point. That's my point.
A few more years?
That's my point, Oral. But if we sit down and trash out this thing about electoral reform, you're going to tell me we can't come up with a...
I know that they admire you and they respect you. You got to push them.
Well, that's for another program.
We're out of time. Anything else you'd like to ask before we go?
All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You know, in the local parlance, I know some going to call me after this program and say, boy, you were... And we would use the word ghetto, not meaning it bad, you know, but it just meant... And sometimes I need that, and I want to thank you for the opportunity just to have a frank discussion and for you to pick my brain. And as I said, you were smiling along because you're like, okay, MP, you know, thanks for the information and for sharing your thoughts, because that's what I did. And not everybody have to agree, but that's okay.
All right. Again, thanks a lot. Much success. All right.
Thank you so much.
That's the leader of the Democratic Party and President of Parliament of St. Martin, MP Sarah Wescot Williams. See you next time right here on Speaking of Everything on YouTube, Facebook, and on Hot 99.9 FM radio. Take care. Bye.